All right, you know what it is. This is the Big Douglas Show. It is an opposition Wednesday. We're trying to get a little smarter, getting geared up for the Titans game on Sunday. To do that, we have Mike Herndon today. Mike, how are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Mike writes for the paulkaharski.com and has two podcasts, the F Words podcast and the Mike Herndon Show. Mike, tell me a little bit about the writing. Tell me a little bit about the podcasting. And do you prefer one over the other?
It's I'd actually taken a year off last year from doing this and came back to it, writing for paulkaharski.com. And right now I'm doing once a week kind of feature piece for the site that basically kind of takes one angle or one piece of whatever the previous week's game was and or maybe even a bigger season long trend, and kind of does a deep dive on it, evaluating whether it be from a number standpoint, a film breakdown standpoint, kind of whatever it takes to explain what's actually happening. And this most recent piece that's up on the site right now really breaks down the Titans' second half struggles, and we can talk a little bit about that. But they have had some remarkable second half numbers, remarkable in a bad way. So far this season, and it's just kind of an interesting. It's been the topic among Titans fans over the last couple weeks now, kind of trying to get to the root cause of that. So I go into the tape and kind of take a look and see if there's any trends there that are worth diving into. And then podcasting, I've got Football and Other F Words, which is a show that I've done for several years with a good friend of mine, Zach Lyons. It's a Titan-centric show, but we do get into some general NFL topics as well. And then the Mike Herndon Show, which is new this year, and it is kind of a more heavy tape analysis, kind of discussion of football tactics that is also Titan-centric. But it's those are kind of the two shows, two very different flavors on the podcast. F Words is a little bit more fun, as you can guess by the name. But yeah, I enjoy doing both. And, honestly, I started off really enjoying writing more, but I've gravitated more towards podcasts recently, just because I feel like the audio format, I feel like I'm more able to articulate ideas concisely in an audio format than I am in written word. I tend to ramble on paper.
We'll get to the second half. It's interesting when we get to this. The team you cover, the second half are much like the Commanders' first half was. Dreadful. Very interesting. Let's see. Before the season started, Mike, what was the general tenor of the fan base? What were the expectations, do you think, for the Titans this year?
I think the vast majority thought that the Titans might take a small step back without A.J. Brown, but the general feeling was that it'd still be good enough to win the division. I mean, I think a lot of that is most people around here didn't feel like the division was very good around the Titans, and I think that's appears to be right. The Jaguars have been better than I thought they'd be this year so far, but I'm still not convinced that they're there. But most people thought the Titans would win the division and probably get bounced in the first round. So basically the same thing that's happened the last 2 years, I think, is kind of where the expectations were.
Where does that leave the coaching staff? It's odd, right? Vrabel has not had a losing season since he's been there. And yet I still see him on like coach hot seat watches. Do you think he's on the hot seat? It doesn't feel like it, right? From the outside looking in.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I always laugh at those lists when they come out, and I'm like, why would they fire Mike Vrabel? He's currently among active NFL coaches, he's sixth in winning percentage. And like you said, he's never had a losing season. He's never had a season where his win total has gone backwards either. He started 9-7. Then he had the 9-7 season where, they went on the run to the AFC Championship game. Then they went 11-5 and won the division. Then they went 12-5 and won the division. So it's only gotten better and better under Vrabel here. There's not – I don't feel like they're in a Super Bowl or bust kind of mode right now. I mean, the playoff frustrations, I think, of the last 2 years, they were in close games against the Ravens and Bengals, and both games that were home games, home playoff games that they lost, that they felt like they should have won. I think that is a little bit of a frustration point for the fan base right now, but I don't think it's anywhere near to the point where Vrabel's on the hot seat. In fact, he and John Robinson both just got extensions this past offseason. So I don't think either one of them is going anywhere anytime soon.
Follow the money always.
Exactly.
Nobody gets extensions to get fired. I'd sign up for Mike Vrabel in a heartbeat. It's year 2 for the offensive coordinator.
It
After
is.
Arthur Smith left, is the offense the same? I mean, obviously you have Derrick Henry, so it's lots of running, lots of boot action, I would imagine, with Tannehill. The beauty of this Wednesday show is, I don't spend a whole lot of time breaking down most teams in the NFL. So nice to have on somebody that does and kind of get us caught up. Is that what we're looking at on Sunday offense-wise? Has it changed much since Arthur Smith left?
Not a lot. I mean, they do some different wrinkles here and there, and obviously, with different personnel in the passing game, they changed out basically 5 of their top 6 pass catchers from last season. So it's been a big upheaval, not just AJ Brown, but also, they completely revamped their tight end room, bringing in Austin Hooper and Chig Okonkwo, the rookies, or the rookie Okonkwo, who had a big game for them last week, and then. They drafted Treylon Burks, who probably
I'm sorry, is that the kid from Maryland?
Yeah, from Maryland. Yeah, and he's been good for them. He really got more involved in the passing game this past week. He's starting to build some trust, but he had a great training camp. They loved him in camp. And I think he's going to take off here as the season progresses as far as a weapon for this offense. But they brought in Treylon Burks, they brought in Robert Woods. They brought in another rookie from UCLA named Kyle Phillips, who is kind of a shifty slot receiver in the mold of, a guy that we're both familiar with, and Adam Humphries, in my opinion. I think he's got a lot of that same skill set, kind of a third down, quick separator kind of guy. But it's a little tweaks here and there, but it's largely the same offense they've had ever since Matt LaFleur was here. Honestly, it's wide zone based. There's a lot of play action shots out of, that stretch zone look where they'll do kind of a half roll or even a full boot to get Tannehill a little bit moved off the spot and give him some time to hit these longer developing routes downfield. The offensive line is a weakness for them in general, at least in pass protection. So they do a lot to try to help that group, when they do want to take those shots downfield. But it is still the same bones. You're going to see a wide zone based look. You're going to see a lot of play action off of it. They've run a little bit more gap and power stuff in the run game. Really going back last 2 years or 3 years now. The final year of Arthur Smith, they really started to bring in some of that duo look, and then Downing has gone further down the duo path, as well as adding some like power, counter stuff. So it's a pretty multiple run game, but it is still largely like wide zone, the kind of Shanahan tree look that you'll see.
Were you surprised they let AJ Brown go?
I was shocked at the time. I thought for sure they would re-sign him. And I know they wanted to, and but depending on whose story you believe, there's been a little, he said, she said about how those negotiations went down. The team has, not directly said it, but has let it leak through the media that, AJ's agent was not necessarily negotiating in good faith, and they wanted, they were trying to force this move to Philly because he wanted to play with his friend Jalen Hurts, who, we all knew they were close for a long time. So, depends on who you believe what really went down. But either way, I think everyone was shocked. I was sure they were going to re-sign him and Jeffrey Simmons from that 2019 class that was transformational for this franchise. And now, obviously I do think Simmons will eventually get his payday here. But it was a stunner on draft night when AJ went out the door.
Now, I'm a huge Dogs fan, so I watch all kind of SEC football. And when they drafted Treylon Burks, it felt like a no-brainer, right? Like same kind of size, same kind of style. I watched him get busy on all kind of SEC teams. Mm-hmm. I was surprised when the news early out of camp was that he wasn't making it happen. He won't be playing on Sunday, I think, but how has he been since he's gotten there, since the season started?
Yeah, so, the camp stuff, really OTAs, I feel like he was a little bit out of shape and that kind of thing. But then once camp started, he showed up to camp in shape. He made some huge plays in camp right away, which kind of quieted some of that down, and then it started to kick back up again after he had a couple quiet days. It was, it's one of those things. You've got a first round rookie wide receiver, and I'm sure you guys are going through this with Dotson too. It's a roller coaster. Like every day, did he make a big catch? If not, why not? What's wrong with him? So I think it was a little bit, the struggles were a little bit overblown, and he's been good for them. And you can see the skill set. Like he didn't have a big game against the Raiders or against the Colts really in the last couple of weeks. He had better numbers against the Giants and Bills in weeks 1 and 2, but you saw them run some like ISO stuff for him against the Raiders, and you saw him get big separation, win on a slant route, one-on-one against press coverage. You saw him get a nice out route that he won, and who knows why Tannehill didn't pull the trigger on it. But there's been opportunities there for him, and he looks good. I'm still buying up all the Treylon Burks stocks I can get. But he did suffer a turf toe injury against the Colts and almost certainly be out for this game. I'd imagine it would be a shocker to me if he played with the bye week following this game. I'd imagine they're going to take the opportunity to get him 2 weeks of rest and try to get him healthy for another big division game against the Colts following the bye.
Yeah, interesting. Both rookie wide receivers will be out Sunday as Dotson has a hamstring. Who actually, you're talking about ups and downs. He's had mostly ups, 4 touchdowns on the season. He's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned my love for the Dogs earlier. Ben Jones is the only guy on that offensive line that I think I recognized. They've had some injuries on there. What are they hoping to do, and what are they trying to? How do they fix it?
So Ben Jones is fantastic. He's one of the more underrated guys in the league to me because he has been. They signed him in 2016. I think he might have actually been John Robinson's very first free agent signing when he came on as GM, and he's still their center today. And he's missed one game in those 6+ years that he's been here now. He's extremely steady. He's constantly one of the top 5 to 10 centers in the NFL. If you go by PFF grades or whatever metric you want to look at, he's a very good player. Next to him, Nate Davis, the right guard, is playing at a really high level right now. He was a draft pick, 3rd-round pick in that 2019 class that really was a huge deal for the Titans and set them on a better trajectory as a team. And Davis has turned in, he's been a starter since about midway through his rookie year and was very, very good last year, very, very good the year before. Seems to have taken another step as a pass blocker. He's always been a good run blocker. Has taken another step as a pass blocker so far this year and really looks like a guy. I mean, they've got a lot of guys to pay out of that 19 class, and he's one of them. The other guard is an interesting case. Aaron Brewer, undrafted guy out of Texas State, who he is listed at 6'1", 274 pounds, which is extremely unique.
Very
obviously, I think he actually weighs closer to 290, 295 now. But as you'd imagine for a guy that size, super athletic, very twitchy offensive lineman. They love to get him in space, whether it be through screens or, pulling or whatever. He's excellent in that part of it. His problem is, as you'd imagine, dealing with power bull rushers in pass blocking situations. He doesn't have the best anchor. He can get beat as a pass blocker, but is a good run blocker. So that interior trio, I actually think is mostly solid. Like Brewer has his moments as a pass blocker rather, but that's a good group. The tackles are where the problems are. They're starting a rookie at right tackle and Nicholas Petit-Frere, who is a third round pick out of Ohio State, who's been good. Like as far as rookie tackles go that are starting week 1, he's been pretty good. He's a very good athlete, looks the part, has all the physical tools. His issue really right now is frankly, it's getting beat inside. He gets beat inside a lot where you can see he's just going to make the block and he's not noticing or not able to quickly enough react to an inside move. Now, he faced Max Crosby 2 weeks ago, who put him in a clown suit. Max Crosby does that to almost everybody. Right. But he's a decent player, better run blocker again than pass blocker. So you can get some pressure off of the tackle. And then the other tackle spot is where they lost Taylor Lewan for the season, who, he's really struggled to stay healthy. When he is healthy, he's a very, very good pass blocker, very good run blocker, one of the better tackles in the league, probably in the top 10 or so range as far as left tackles go when he's right, but just hasn't been right in recent seasons. And, now out for the season. So they plugged in Dennis Daly, a guy they traded for right before the season, who was going to be cut by the Panthers. So that's not a great situation there. And he's been okay-ish. They help him a lot. They help both tackles a lot. But it is a problem. If they have to get into a straight drop back passing game, the tackles are a major problem in pass protection, and it really limits some of the stuff that they can do in that phase of the game. So that's kind of the overview of the offensive line. They're a better run blocking group than they are a pass blocking group, which we're kind of used to seeing around here at this point. But the tackles are really a problem in the pass pro game.
To me, that will be where the game is determined. I mean, I know they always say that, right, in the trenches, but seriously, the Commanders, same problem. They're on their second or third center now. The right guard is a replacement. The right tackle is out. And you guys have a fantastic D-line, which we'll get to in a minute. But so do the Commanders, with Jonathan Allen and Jerron Payne there and Montez Sweat on the edge. So that really, I think, will be the test of which team can get and sustain the run game, which you guys, I think, probably have the upper hand there with Derrick Henry, and who can apply the most pressure in passing downs. I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup because, as I said, we're a little weak on offensive line, and you guys have a really good defensive line. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Jeffrey Simmons is kind of the first guy that jumps out. He's one of the best players in the NFL, bar none. I mean, I don't know how much people know of him outside of Nashville, but he is an absolute monster in the middle of that defense. He doesn't always put up huge numbers just because that is the way defensive tackles sometimes go. He did have, I think it was 8.5 sacks last year, which is really good for an interior player. But he is very difficult to block. He is a major problem. You can't block him one-on-one. Like very few. I mean, he played against Quentin Nelson last week. The Colts were not willing to let Quentin Nelson take him one-on-one. They doubled him every single time. So it is a guy that you have to account for, and that does help open up things for some other guys. Now, the rest of this group, we'll see how healthy they are, because Harold Landry obviously got injured before the season started. He was their leading sack guy last year. Very, very good player. They just paid him a ton of money in the offseason, and he tore his ACL a week before the season started. So brutal break for them there, which has affected their pass rush in a lot of ways, because he was great with these stunts and games.
UVA guy, right?
What was that?
Harold Landry, UVA guy?
Boston College. Yeah. But he was a really good player. They've missed him, but the compounding factor with that is Bud Dupree has been in and out of the lineup this year with a hip injury. He missed the entirety of the Raiders game, and then he returned for the Colts game only to get hurt on the very first drive when he was recovering a fumble. And that loss is big for them, because what they lack, the other guy across from Dupree, as far as an edge rusher right now, is Danico Autry, who they really played inside most of the time last year, but they've kicked him out to defensive end to really kind of take Landry's place, more or less. Very different style player, but he's taken that role on. And Autry's excellent. Like, again, another guy that I would consider one of the more underrated players on the team. He is a wrecking ball in the middle of that defense, and coming off the edge, he's still very good as well. But they just don't have athletes on the edge right now, and Dupree is, if he's right and if he's healthy and he can play. But the other guy that has any sort of juice as an athlete is Ola Adeni, who's more of a special teams guy, kind of rotational edge, but he does have some ability from an athlete, from an athleticism standpoint. And he's missed the last 2 games as well. So they've been really banged up at edge. They've been playing guys, they brought in Mario Edwards off of, I can't remember whose practice squad he was on, but he immediately played like 30 something snaps for them. last week, fresh off the waiver wire. So it's that's the tough situation for them right now is can they get a pass rush without Bud Dupree on the field? Simmons is going to cause problems. Autry is going to cause problems. And Rashad Weaver, who's a second-year guy out of Pitt, has 4 sacks this season. But to be honest, like those sacks are a little misleading as far as like how impactful he really is as a pass rusher. He's a good player, but he's not like a down and down out threat right now. He's more of a guy that wins with length and power, which is fine, but he doesn't have the bend and juice that Landry and Dupree have. So
not a whole lot do.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is rare. So that is kind of the question mark. Dupree, I feel like, is just a critical piece for them to keep healthy, and I don't know if he'll be able to go this week or not, because it sounded like he re-aggravated the hip issue. So who knows how bad that might be.
Folks around here will remember Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. How's the first round product been for you guys? He was hurt the first year, is that right? But he's healthy now.
Right. Yeah. So he came in with the back injury that kind of hurt his draft stock a little bit. And then, but he was healthy enough to start training camp as a rookie last season, and then tore his ACL, and really his first real significant action against the Bills last season is an unfortunate deal for him, and which really set him back in his development. He is still less than a year removed from that ACL surgery. So he's still, I don't think he's fully physically to where he was. Obviously his athleticism coming out of Virginia Tech was insane. There was the stories about the 24-mile-an-hour GPS measured running, and just the all that in a 6'2", 200-pound package was what was so enticing about him. But I don't think he's fully back yet physically, and he's struggling a little bit for them because I think he's struggling a bit with his confidence at this point. The guy's played less than 200 live snaps of football since 2019. Obviously had the COVID year, had the injury last year. It's just been kind of a series of incidents for him, which have held him back. And, they've been rotating him. They rotated him last game with Terrence Mitchell at one of the corner spots. Farley clearly is the more physically gifted guy between him and Mitchell, but there's some sort of disconnect right now with Farley. And I don't know whether that's a trust factor with the knee, if that's a trust factor with the coaching staff and knowing the playbook. And I know he's blown a couple coverages in some action earlier this season. So it's kind of, most Titans fans are very down on Farley. I think I probably fall more in the camp of he needs time. He was always a little bit of a project, and he hasn't really gotten a lot of work yet. So I'm willing to be patient and kind of see how this bears out. But right now, he is not a plus player for them.
Nobody is in base very much, but what is the base that they try to set up? And then a couple of things. The linebackers are banged up. Who do you expect to be ready for the weekend?
Yeah, so previous to this year, I would have said they're a 3-4 base. This year, because of the Landry injury, they really are more of like, I don't know that I've seen them in a true 3-4 more than like maybe a handful of snaps. They really are a sub package only almost defense. And so, linebacker wise, David Long is going to be one of the starters. He's kind of their will linebacker. Very, very good player. He's an undersized guy, but he is all over the field, makes a ton of plays for them. Very active, very aggressive linebacker. The guy that would normally be starting next to him is Zach Cunningham. He didn't play last week with a elbow injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to go or not. They didn't put him on IR, so I assume that means he's at least going to have a chance, possibly. But frankly, Cunningham had struggled a little bit earlier this season, and they played Dylan Cole and then a guy, Joe Schobert, who they had just signed.
I like Joe Schobert.
Yeah, they just signed him last week, and they played him a good amount of snaps last week as well. So they rotated those two, and those two both played fantastic games against the Colts. They dominated that Colts offensive line and held Jonathan Taylor to 42 yards on 20 carries. So they defended the run outstandingly. Now, pass pro, that's going to be a question no matter who the Titans have in at linebacker. Long is a pretty good pass defender, but the rest of them are all going to be a point where you could target if they ever get matched up in man coverage. So,
Mike, you study the team closely. If the Colt or the Titans were to get beat on Sunday, how would it happen? What if the Commanders asked you, said, "Hey, what's the formula? What we got to do to win on Sunday?" What do you think?
I think the biggest thing is you've got to stop Derrick Henry, and I know that is kind of duh,
Right.
but the Titans really do go through their running game, and if they can't run the football, you start to put them in uncomfortable situations for their offense. Ryan Tannehill has been very good for them, but he's very good in a defined role. He needs to be able to play off of play action and make these defined reads and hit his back step, let the ball go. He's a very accurate, very talented thrower of the football. He's just not as advanced as far as being able to read coverages, make plays, anticipate all that stuff. So he needs some assistance from the run game to be successful. And if you can bottle up Derrick Henry, I think you'll win this game. So that to me, now that's easier said than done, right? Everyone comes into the game against the Titans wanting to stop Derrick Henry. And they do a lot of things to get him the ball, and they've been doing more to get him the ball recently in the passing game, which is something to kind of keep an eye on. They've thrown him more passes in the past 2 weeks than they've thrown him in any 2-week stretch during his entire career. So that seems to be an area of emphasis for them, and it'll be interesting to see how that works. Now, on the flip side, I think the way to attack this Titans defense is to air it out. It is to attack the corner opposite Christian Fulton. Christian Fulton is one of the better young corners in the NFL right now. He's a very good player, very steady. They've got 2 very good safeties in Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker. Mm-hmm. But whether it's Farley or Mitchell playing outside opposite Fulton, that's the guy you want to go after. Roger McCreary will probably be their slot corner unless Hugo Amadi is able to return from injury. And if McCreary is in the slot, McCreary can be beat in the slot. He's a very physical player, but he's had some ups and downs. He's a rookie. So, I mean, it's another guy. If you can target the rookies, a lot of times you're going to have success in the NFL, and the Titans are playing several of them right now. So I think you got to attack this team through the passing game. They haven't been as good against the run this year, but they kind of roared back to life this past week against the Colts. And that's been their calling card the last few years with Simmons, and they've got some other big boys inside that are really tough to move, like Tier Tart and Naquan Jones, who have been good players for them. So I think you got to throw the ball on them, and you got to stop the run on the other side.
It'll be fascinating. We talked about those lines on each side, and I know that you had said earlier that they've been poor in the second half, and the Commanders, just outside of that first Jaguars game, haven't scored in the first half of games. They tapped them on there in the second half. So it'll be interesting to see that, kind of juxtaposition between the two teams, is if they can get it right or not. Let's see. It's early in the week. I know it's Wednesday, but give me a score prediction.
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's two teams that, are relatively evenly matched. Both have strengths and weaknesses here, but with the Titans being on the road, it's always tough to win on the road in the NFL. So I don't know. I'll go something like 24 to 21 Titans. I mean, that's kind of been where their scores have been landing here recently, and I think that's about where it ends up. That sounds
about right. I mean, I'd take the Commanders at home, obviously, but I think that 24-21 range is exactly where they're sitting at. Mike, the plan and the goal is to always learn something on Wednesdays. I think we did that today. Remind the people what you got coming up so that they can find what you got going on.
Absolutely. PaulKowalski.com. You can read about the Titans' second half struggles. They've been outscored 64-7 so far this season in the second half of games, which, is amazing considering they've won 2 of those. But it's I wrote about that and kind of some of the reasonings and the breakdowns that caused those struggles in the second half against the Colts this week. And then you can follow along podcast wise at FWordsPod. We've got a episode up now, breaking down that game and talking a little bit about this matchup. And then later in the week on should be Thursday evening, it'll go up. The Mike Herndon Show. You can check it out at Mike Herndon Show on Twitter. We will be talking more in depth about X's and O's stuff from the Colts game, and then spinning forward into the Commanders matchup, which I'm still really having to focus on saying Commanders because it is a tough adjustment.
We've gone from Redskins to the football team to the Commanders in 4 years. Feel my pain.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine. I struggle with it. So.
Well, buddy, I appreciate you coming on today. I had a good time.
Yeah, me too. And anytime these teams match up, I'd love to do it again.
No doubt about it. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Doug.